Vital knowledge, clear explanations, and simplified answers about the rules of Islam to enable English-speaking Muslims to understand Islam properly and implement it correctly. Join Sheikh Assim al-Hakeem on Ask Zed, coming live to you on Zed TV at the following times. Our media partner, Huda TV.
A is for Allah, nothing but Allah. Ba is the beginning of Bismillah. Ta is for taqwa, bewaring of Allah. And Tha is for thawab, a reward. Ja is for Jannah, the garden of paradise. Ha is for Hajj, the blessed pilgrimage. Kha is for Khatam, the seal of the prophethood given to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه أجمعين. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome to this new episode of Ask Zad, coming to you live from Zad Studios here in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. The phone numbers you'll find inshallah displayed at the bottom of the screen for you if you have any queries about Islam you'd like to ask about. So feel free to call. A brother sent us an email saying that my father yells at me a lot. He curses me a lot most of the time for no reason at all. He used to hit me when I was a child. I'm suffering from PTSD because of him. If I try to avoid him, he gets very angry. Is it permissible to leave such a father? This is problematic, and unfortunately, it is reoccurring in a lot of the Muslims' homes, not only with their father, but also with their mother. And some would be having problems with their in-laws, whether a father-in-law or a mother-in-law. The answer to this query is divided into two types. One, an advice to the parents. You have to fear Allah Azza wa Jal. It is true that Allah has given you powers over your children. It is true that Allah has instructed your children to be dutiful, obedient, and respectful. Nevertheless, do not think for a second that Allah Azza wa Jal will not hold you accountable for your abuse, for your unfairness, for not being just with your children, for yelling at them without any reason, for mistreating them for no apparent reason. Do not think for a second that Allah Azza wa Jal would not hold you accountable. Allah will. So do not force your children to be disobedient. It's haram. This is unfair because you're pushing them to sin. Fear Allah Azza wa Jal. Be fair with them, be just with them, and try to put yourself in their shoes with your parents and how you were acting at that time. The second part of the advice would be for the children themselves. First of all, people are tested with different types of tests. One would ask, why did Allah Azza wa Jal put us in the first place on earth? The answer is to worship Him. And part of worshiping Allah Azza wa Jal is that we are tested. Do people think that they will be let alone without being tested? No, they will be tested, so it would be apparent who is dutiful, obedient, and who is not. Now, having said that, there are people you and I know about that are tested by various types of tests. If you look at our brothers and sisters all over the world, they are displaced, kicked out of their own homes. Some of them are tested by losing a loved one to murders, genocide, rapes. Some of them even go further to try and find an honest and honorable way of life, and they cross the sea and drown. Some of them are tested by famine and droughts. Some are tested by cancer, different types of diseases and epidemics. Some suffer greatly through hunger and illnesses, and suffer even greater when they see their loved ones dying in front of them because of such calamities. Your test that Allah has chosen for you is your father, who's abusive, who hits you, who curses you. Would you like to take any of the previously mentioned calamities to be your own test instead? Would you like to take it instead of what you're suffering at the moment? Definitely not. Therefore, you have no choice other than being tolerant, being patient, being respectful to your father, not arguing with him, not provoking him to do or say things that may result in you answering him back and him becoming furious and angry with you. So try to avoid what triggers him. Try to always give him respect, no matter what he says. Never defend yourself when your father accuses you of something. Just apologize. Never argue and say, yes, but this and that. No, do not do this. And always anticipate the reward from Allah Azza wa Jal, and things inshaAllah will go through. Aqib says, there are some people who, when get sick, have some problems in their lives, they go to the peer, and those peers recite some Quranic verses, and they blow on the water or some dates. They give it to that person and tell them to drink it or eat it, and your problem will be solved. Is it right or wrong? Some say that this is shirk. First of all, I don't know about these peers. Are they legit? Are they scholars of Islam? Are they on the Aqidah of Tawheed? Or they are grave worshippers? Or they are those who think that they can communicate with the jinn, which means that they are soothsayers or fortune tellers? Generally speaking, when you have a problem that can only be solved by Allah Azza wa Jal, it is not permissible to go to Tom, Dick, and Harry and ask them for help. This is unacceptable, and it can fall under the category of shirk. See, if there's a big box and I cannot carry it on my own, asking someone to give me a helping hand and to carry it with me, asking the aid and the assistance of someone else is permissible. Why? Because it is within their ability. They can do that. But if I, for example, have an illness that cannot be cured, and I go to the peers and ask them to help me solve my problem. If something was stolen from me and I'm unable to detect it, and I go to them and ask them to tell me where it is, etc., this is shirk, because this is not within the scope or within the ability of a human being. So it has to be something extra, which leads to shirk. Therefore, let us look at these peers. If they tell you the water I recite Quran, if it is only Quran, or the dates which I recite Quran, and this is an innovation to recite over food. Drink, yes, scholars say it's okay, but food, tomorrow you'll bring a dish of biryani and you say this is recited Surah Al-Baqarah on it, it's good for your kneecap. This is nonsense. This is baseless. But assuming that they do this, but they say if you drink from it, your problem will be solved. These are soothsayers. This is not in their hands. No one knows this. The best I could do for you is dua. And I'm not sure if Allah is going to answer my dua or not. I can do ruqya for you. And I'm not sure if Allah will cure your illness or not. It's not me. It's not my dua. It's not my ruqya. It is all in the hands of Allah Azza wa Jal. Therefore, most likely what you're asking about aqib is that these people are committing shirk and they're soothsayers. But you cannot verify this unless you know the people, whether they are people of tawheed and religion, and they're just simply doing ruqya while connecting people's hearts to Allah Azza wa Jal, not attributing anything to themselves. But if they say that if you drink this, it will solve your problems, then it's a no-go. Abdul Wajid says, when we shift into a new home, then do we need to make sacrifice? That's a good question. The answer is, it depends on your intention. When you make the sacrifice after you move into a new house, what is your intention? What does it matter? Oh, it matters a lot. All our deeds are judged by the intention. And I'll give you an example. A lot of the Arabs and the non-Arabs, when they move into a new home, they slaughter a sheep at the doorsteps. And they smear and put the blood of that sheep on the steps. Some of them does this when they're building the house. They put it at the pillars of the foundation before the house is built, at the very beginning stages. And if you ask them, why do you do this? They say, we are offering this to the jinn. And some of them don't say that clearly, but they say, we offer this so that the house would not be haunted and it would not be harmed. It would be protected. This is total shirk. This takes an individual out of the fold of Islam. However, if someone moves into a new house and he gathers people and he offers some food or slaughters a sheep and cooks it and offers it to them, this is known as wakira. And al-wakira is derived from al-wakr, which is the home or the place. And the majority of scholars say that this is recommended, permissible. Is it part of the sunnah? I don't know of any authentic hadith relating it to the sunnah, but the scholars say that not everything needs a sunnah to recommend it or to at least say that it is permissible, because if your son passes the exam and you slaughter a sheep and call people to celebrate by eating from it, this is halal, this is permissible, it's not a sunnah. So wakira is one of the meals in Islam that the jurors and the scholars of Islam, the majority of them say that this is recommended and there's nothing wrong in that, inshallah. But one must not exaggerate or refer to extravagance. He must keep it simple. RK says, my mother uses a spice mixture in which nutmeg is listed as an ingredient. So what's the ruling on that? If I understand it correctly, nutmeg is a spice. In Arabic, we call it jawzatul tib. It's a nut. And the scholars, when asked about it, the vast majority of scholars say that it is prohibited. Why? They say that if consumed in certain amounts, it can lead to hallucination. And it has a similar impact of pot or drugs, marijuana, whatever. And therefore, they say that the ruling of it, it's haram. In the Hanbali school of thought, they prohibit it totally. And this is why the scholars say the general rule, whatever consumed in large quantities, small quantities is haram. So a nutmeg is from that type. It surely hallucinates, at least it puts you down or it intoxicates you, as people of experience say, and hence putting a little of it in the spices, in the food, would render it and make it haram, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Abu Abdul Rahman from the UK.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salamullah.
Sheikh, please, I would like to ask a question.
Yes, but raise your voice a little bit, yeah, Abu Abdul Rahman.
All right. My question is, please, can you explain the role of the youth in solving the Muslim crisis, like the problems that Muslims face nowadays?
Okay, any more questions?
Yes, and the second question is, if I forget to remove my socks and I wipe after 24 hours, what do I do? Like, I wipe on my socks beyond 24 hours.
Okay.
So I have to... All right. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, Abu Abdul Rahman had two questions. The first question is quite generic, which is, what is the role of the youth in the current crisis the Muslims face? It is not only the youth's role, it is the entire ummah. The youth may be addressed not to be impulsive, because usually the youth tend to be impulsive, tend to shoot, then ask questions, tend to do things and apologize. And all of these things are prohibited in Islam. So what to do? They have so much energy in them. They have so much zeal and the need to act. However, this has to be harnessed by the scholars, by the elders, by the people of wisdom, who themselves may not be able to act like them and do the things they can do or achieve what they can achieve, but at least they can give and share with them some of their own wisdom and experience. So the most important thing for the youth is to have scholars leading them, real scholars of Islam, not social media scholars, not muftis from here and there, whether they are bought by the governments or they are self-acclaimed. You have to go to the real scholars who follow the Quran and the Sunnah. Like Sheikh ibn Uthaymeen said, may Allah have mercy on his soul, there are three types of scholars. Scholars of the state, who gives fatwa according to what the governments want, tailor-made. And scholars of the nation. Whatever the majority of the people want, they give them fatwa. Not according to what pleases Allah Azza wa Jal, but rather according to the masses. We want numbers, we want quantities. We're not interested in qualities anymore. And the third type are the scholars of the millah, of the deen. And these are few, but they are known. They don't fear except Allah Azza wa Jal. And they weigh the pros and cons, and they do not give fatwa according to what the masses want to hear, nor what the state wants to hear. So the youth have to abide and have to follow such scholars. As for the general ummah, the crises that we are seeing, these calamities are caused by our distance from Islam. Look around you and you will find that all these crises are caused by the separation between state and religion. Whenever the Muslims say what is in the masjid is in the masjid and what is in the nightclub is in the nightclub, know that they are doomed. And this is what's happening all over the world. We have to go back to square number one. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, Islam started strange, and it will get back to becoming strange So Tuba, which is a big tree in paradise, for those who are among the strangers. So they said, who are those among the strangers? The Prophet said, those who are following my footsteps and the footsteps of the companions. So the youth have to follow the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ and his companions. And if they manage to do that through the consultation and the guidance of the scholars of Islam, they would be unbeatable. But unfortunately, the enemies of Islam, the hypocrites, the liberals, etc., this is what they are banking on. Separate the youth from their scholars, discredit scholars, tarnish their reputation, accuse them of not knowing anything in this world, accusing them of being petrodollars or scholars for dollars or milkshakes instead of sheikhs, as they claim. All of these words are similar to the words that were used against our Prophet ﷺ, which means that they are walking the same path for being harassed and abused in the same fashion of that the Prophet ﷺ was abused. So this is what I would advise the youth, that they have to abide by their scholars, acquire knowledge, learn the Quran, learn the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, implement it in their lives, walk the talk, and inshallah our calamities will be solved. His second question was that if a person wiping over his socks or shoes exceeded the time limit, which is a day and a night, 24 hours. So he wiped after exceeding the time limit and he prayed. The answer is your wudu and your prayer, which you had prayed with such a wudu, is invalid, because you must wash your feet after the time limit has expired, whenever you want to make wudu, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. We have a short break. Stay tuned, and inshallah, we'll be right back.
Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today I'm going to talk about the book Interactions of the Greatest Leader. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam reminded us through his guidance and example that Islam is complete submission to the will of Allah. For one who submits, a mere declaration or display of belief will not be taken for success, but his or her heart and soul will certainly be put to test. Allah tested the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam severely in order that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam becomes an example for his companions to follow. Similarly, he tests the believer to see whether he lives a righteous life in accordance with the instructions and commands set by Allah, or lives according to what his desires dictate. Whether the faith he displays is firmly rooted in his heart, or is it merely on the surface. He will be tested to see whether he will continue to have faith and love of Allah when in a calamity, as he does when in comfort, whether he will continue to remember and worship him if given bounties and comforts of life, as he does when he lives a modest life. Allah will undoubtedly test him to see if his faith, trust and love of him is unconditional, or is it conditioned upon good health and a comfortable life, free from stress and anxiety. The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam showed us through his own example that for a righteous Muslim, this life is a testing ground where he will continue to be tested until he meets Allah. For him, tests will be conducted on earth while he lives, and not after he dies. He knows that as soon as death arrives and he steps into the next world, his tests are over. There, he only receives the result of his tests. and enjoys the fruits of the deeds that he committed during a short span of time called life.
Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Mahwish says, what are the various times du'as can be answered? Well, Allah Azza wa Jal is close to us and He responds to whomever makes dua, even to the disbelievers. Can you imagine this? If a disbeliever, a kafir, makes dua, especially when he is in distress or someone has wronged him, Allah responds to him. The times of dua are so many, and it would not be sufficient for us to mention them, but I'll just give you a small hint. The dua on Laylatul Qadr, the night of decree in Ramadan, the dua is answered. But before I continue, there are 3 types of answering dua, and we've mentioned this so many times before. So if I say, oh Allah, cure my illness, Allah can cure my illness, or Allah can deflect something equivalent to curing my illness. So if curing my illness requires €1,000, there is another calamity that it was decreed upon me that would have cost me €1,000 and Allah deflected it. But I'm still making dua thinking that Allah is not responding to me. No, Allah responded, but you did not know. Thirdly, Allah Azza wa Jal may store this for you on the Day of Judgment. So, oh Allah, cure my illness, you're not cured, and nothing was deflected away from you. But when you come on the Day of Judgment, you'll find a lot of good deeds, and you say, I didn't do these, and you will be told that this is part of answering and responding to your dua. So you can make dua on Laylatul Qadr, the night of decree in Ramadan. It is answered between adhan and iqamah. Iqamah announces the actual prayer. So even if I am at home and the time is due at 1 o'clock and I make dua until 2 o'clock, a whole hour, then I start my prayer of dhuhr or whatever, then this is a time where Allah responds and answers your dua. If it's in the masjid, it's well known. It's about 15 to 20 minutes between adhan and iqamah. Also, Allah responds to the dua at the last hour of Friday. So, just before sunset of Friday, an hour before that, if you're in the masjid, praising Allah, offering salutation to the Prophet ﷺ, making dua, Allah Azza wa Jal answers this. Allah answers your dua in the last third of the night. As in the authentic hadith, Allah says, isn't there anyone asking me I should give? Isn't there anyone seeking my forgiveness where I forgive him, etc. So in these last third of the night, just before Adhan al-Fajr, this is a really high time. It's the peak time for answering du'as. At the time of raining, when it rains, Allah answers the dua. When you hear the rooster making its sound just before Fajr, the Prophet said, whenever you hear the rooster praying or making its sound, then ask Allah from His grace, because it has seen an angel. So it's a time of dua. Also at the end of fard prayers and also voluntary prayers. But the hadith stated clearly that at the end of fard prayers, dubur as-salawat al-maktuba. And this is what made some people think that the hadith refers to after the fard prayer. And we've said this so many times, that the hadith is understood in the light of other hadiths, where the Prophet told us ﷺ, that after offering salutation upon the Prophet ﷺ during salat and before salam, before concluding it, this is time of dua, where Allah answers those who call Him. Not after salam, because after you finish your prayer and conclude it, it is time for dhikr, as Sheikh al-Islam Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim had chosen. Also among the favored places of dua is when you are in sujood. The Prophet had said, the closest you are to Allah while you are in prostration. So choose whatever you wish. It is worthy of Allah Azza wa Jal answering you. And this, of course, as we've also mentioned before, just reminders, that is within the salat. Nowadays, there's an innovation, a new trend. After Fajr prayer, after it's concluded, people are making dhikr. After 5-10 minutes, all of a sudden you see people prostrating. They're not in salah. And they prolong their prostration. After finish, my friend, come. What were you doing? He said, this is prostration for dua. I said, but you're not praying. He said, yes, this is a separate prostration. This is haram. This is innovation. It's not acceptable. You have committed a grave sin. Others repeat this on and say that this is prostration of gratitude, of shukr. And again, this is an innovation. When you are blessed with something that is not reoccurring, the sunnah is to offer one sajda, one prostration of gratitude. If your boss gives you a paycheck at the end of the month, you do not perform sujood al-shukr. Why? Because this is reoccurring. If your wife cooks a good meal, some would say that this is not reoccurring, but generally speaking, this is a reoccurring blessing. You do not prostrate for gratitude or for shukr. But if someone tells you that your uncle who was in ICU for 6 weeks has woken up from his coma and now, mashallah, he's communicating and he's becoming better, then you may prostrate, because this is one in a lifetime occasion that requires showing and expressing your gratitude to Allah, etc. And Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Aman says, why is it permissible for a person to take payment from people for teaching Quran or any other Islamic work if this is supposed to be ibadah for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal? Aman, my friend, when you perform a form of ibadah, the ibadah, I don't know if the translation is correct or not. I'm doing it I'm shooting out of the hip, as they say. Ibadah is divided into 2 types: transitive and intransitive. What do we mean by transitive and intransitive? We know that there are verbs that are intransitive. When I say I sit, I walk, I don't need to have an object afterwards. When I mention transitives, I have to put I write a letter. So a letter is an object. I don't know if the translation is right or wrong, but sue me, who cares? Coming back to ibadah. Ibadah is divided into 2 types. Intransitive, which means that I am the only one benefiting from it. So I pray night prayer. I fast Mondays and Thursdays. I read the Quran. Nobody's benefiting from this except me. Taking money on such ibadah would be shirk, because I'm supposed to be doing it for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. The second type of ibadah is the transitive type, which benefits others, such as teaching knowledge to students. So if I teach knowledge, if I teach people how to recite the Quran, I'm not charging on my recitation of the Quran. I'm charging on my effort teaching others. Likewise, if an imam of a masjid takes a salary from the government, this is permissible because he is taking part of his time not to pray on his own, but rather to lead the people, to teach them, etc. The origin of this is the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, may Allah be pleased with him. When a group of the companions were stranded, hungry, had no food, asked a tribe of idol worshippers to host them and to give them what people give to their guests. And they refused. But later on came back to them, asking them for help because their tribe's leader has been stung by a snake or by a scorpion. So one of them said, I can give ruqya, I can do healing through Quran, but I will not do this until you give us food that we ask for. So you have to compensate us. So they gave them a number of sheep, let's say 30. And the man went, recited the Quran, only Surah Al-Fatiha, and blew on that sick person. Kept on repeating it, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, doing this. And all of a sudden the guy stood up, there's nothing wrong with him. So they went back to the Prophet ﷺ and they told him, O Prophet of Allah, we improvised. We were hungry and we didn't know what to do. When they came to us seeking our help, we had a transaction with them. So what do you think? The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wassalam, said to them that the most worthy thing to charge wage and money for is Quran. So he's telling them that what you had done is perfect. It's crystal clear that it is legitimate. From this hadith and so many other hadiths, the scholars concluded, the vast majority of scholars concluded that this is permissible, but it is note saying that if you do it for the sake of Allah without charging, that would be even better and better for you at the side of Allah, but it is totally legit and halal for you to take such money. Hassan says, if a person intends to do something for the sake and pleasure of Allah, but also knows that part of why he's doing the deed is for himself, for example, for fame, even though he seeks refuge in Allah Azza wa Jal for this subconscious intention, should he still do the deed or abstain altogether? Now, this is one of the reasons where we get Satan, Iblis, to mess up with our minds. The issue of intention. So the brother is saying, Hassan, that he is doing it for the sake of Allah, for the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal. But deep down inside, he gets this feeling that it is part of seeking fame and recognition from people. So should he go on with it or stop and abstain from doing it? Because at the end of the day, he's seeking refuge in Allah from the whispers of shaitan and trying his level best. Akhi, you have two choices. Either you stop or you continue. If you stop, this means that you have lost the reward of benefiting people, of doing a good deed, etc. If you continue, you have two options. Either you continue while associating others with Allah. So why am I giving Ask Zad every week? Because people would recognize me and send me emails, ask me questions. Maybe people would think highly of me. I like that. This is shirk. If I'm doing it just to please others or to be pointed at as a scholar or a student of knowledge, I have issues. I have a problem. If I do it for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jalla, and no one knows this except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then I have a good deal. So I have these two options. Which one to choose? I'll tell you, akhi, keep on doing what pleases Allah and fight your inner feelings of seeking fame or doing it for recognition or to draw attention. Fight it strongly, seek refuge in Allah Azza wa Jal, and always rectify and purify your intention. So that, how would I know that my intention is sincere for Allah Azza wa Jal or not? If I get bad comments on tonight's show, saying, Sheikh, you did this, you did that, we did not like it, it was boring, you spoke a lot, you stuttered, you did this, and I felt sad for that. Or when people compliment me and praise me and said, MashaAllah, you're witty, you're smart, you're this, you're that, your show was excellent, and I feel happy for that. Imam Ahmad, may Allah have mercy on his soul, said, the sign of sincerity, what signifies, what shows me whether I'm sincere or not, he says, the sign of sincerity is when praising and criticism are equal in your heart. And this makes a difference, because then whether you praise me or criticize me, who gives whatever? Who cares? I don't care. I'm doing what I'm doing for the sake of Allah. So, Akh Hassan, I advise you to fight your inner wiswas. Seek refuge in Allah Azza wa Jal and move on. Keep on doing good things. Pray to Allah to prevent hypocrisy from creeping into your heart or to your actions, and pray to Allah to make your acts sincere for His sake. A sister sends us a question saying that there is a community, a group of people that think they have more rights over their sons' children than the girl's side, the nanny and the nana. I don't know what that is, but I presume it's a grandfather and mother. Is this true? Does the boy's side of the family have more rights over his kids than the girl's side of the family do? First of all, that as per the child, my responsibility towards my grandfather, whether paternal or maternal, are the same. I have to give them due respect. I have to obey them. I have to try to provide for them if they are in need. As for the rights of the grandparents over their children, now we have to acknowledge that a grandfather from the father's side, a paternal grandfather, shares with me my name and shares with me the inheritance. If I don't have a father between us, there's no one between us. And if he dies, I inherit him. If I die, he inherits me because he's a father. And likewise, the issue of names and lineage. He can be a girl's guardian in marriage, while the maternal grandfather does not inherit, and the maternal grandfather does not have the right to become a guardian, etc. So in a sense, yes, there is a difference, but not to the extent that they use their power to influence and to dictate what their grandchildren must do, such as disconnecting or disobeying their maternal grandparents, etc. Muhammad says, when I used to pray any nafil prayer, like duha or dhuhr voluntary rawatib, it became a habit of mine to combine two or more intentions with it, like prayers of istighfar, I think he means tawbah, repentance, etc. What is the ruling on it? It is permissible to combine intentions, but when it comes to the prayer of tawbah, you have to have a particular sin that you want to repent from. Not to just pray 2 rak'ahs every now and then for tawbah without identifying what you're doing it for. This becomes a bid'ah. But if you have a particular sin, I saw a movie yesterday, so I'm going to pray 2 rak'ahs and ask Allah for repentance and forgiveness. Yes, this is something specific. Combining the intentions is possible. For example, duha prayer. I'd like to pray duha, but after dhuhr, I'm going for an interview. So I pray duha with the intention of istikhara. And after I finish, I make my dua of istikhara. I come to the masjid, I pray dhuhr sunnah, voluntary. But I intend in it that this is 2 rak'ahs also for tahiyyatul majlis, tahiyyatul masjid, the salutation of the masjid. And also 2 rak'ahs of wudu in the same 2 units. I have 3 intentions. This is permissible, inshallah, and there's nothing wrong with that. Sharif says, is it compulsory to announce the value of the mahar during the nikah? Mahar means dowry, which a man gives to the woman he is getting married to. Nikah means marriage. So now we know that in order to a marriage to take place, there has to be the proposal from the guardian's side, the father of the girl. He goes to the boy and says, I give you my daughter in marriage. So this is the proposal. And there has to be the acceptance from the boy. So he says, I accept her marriage. And there has to be 2 Muslim male witnesses at least to testify. Of course, all of this is with the consent and approval of the girl. Nothing is being done without her approval, prior approval. So if this is done, the marriage is conducted and they're man and wife. What about the dowry? Well, the dowry can be given before, can be given at the time, and can be given afterwards. But it has to be identified. So is it compulsory to announce in front of the 1,000 people attending the wedding or the marriage contract by saying, Wallahi, my daughter has received 1,000 euros? No, there's no obligation in that. However, it is recommended, if not a little bit more, that the 2 witnesses acknowledge the mahar, so that if in the future we need to perform khul, or there's a divorce, or the woman did not receive her mahar, the 2 witnesses would come to the judge and say, yes, it was 1,000 euros and it was not delivered to the girl to our knowledge. So the judge forces him to pay. So these 2 are sufficient. What about if we did not tell anyone? In this case, there is a dilemma, because at the time of divorce or khul', separation, the husband says, I intended to give you 1,000. And the girl says, no, you were supposed to give me 5,000. So how do we solve this dispute? The Muslim judge looks at the average that girls receive as dowry in their community, and he forces the man to pay that amount, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Fajr says, how to know if I'm affected by evil eye? Evil eye is something that a person, whether good or bad, may inflict it upon you upon seeing something he likes, whether intentionally, and usually it is unintended. So I see someone driving a fancy car, and I say, whoa, what a beautiful car. Or I see someone working out in the gym, and I said, look at the weight he is bench pressing. My God, this guy is a monster. Now, this is evil eye. I have no intention of him being sick, or of him losing his powers, or of him having an accident. But the evil spirit in me came out unintentionally. So he says, how to know if I'm affected by evil eye? First of all, 95% of those thinking of themselves to be possessed with jinn, having evil eye, sorcery, envy, whatever, they are delusional. They are imagining things. But these things are a fact, and they happen. But not to that extent. If my wife is nagging, she's possessed with jinn. If my daughter fails the exam, it's an evil eye. If my son falls sick, it's envy. If I lose my job, it's black magic. Not to that extent. Everything that happens, we blame it upon these things. But it's true. Evil eye is true. So how do I know that I'm affected by it? I personally do not know anything from the Quran or Sunnah that tells us it is usually an illness. So if someone has all of a sudden developed migraine, or he has stomach aches, or he fell sick, or he has a fever, and the doctor say there's nothing wrong with it, this is most likely to be evil eye. Other than that, they say that a lot of sweating that is new, or urinating a lot, or shivering, or having bad nightmares, etc., change of the color, feeling unwell when reading or reciting or listening to the Quran, etc. These can be also symptoms, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Sayyid Farooq says that in the money deposited in a wallet, it's called Paytm wallet, and they deposited it in an escrow account, and according to the RBI guidelines, with a partner bank, they have to give them. See, the issue is, if there is a wallet you invest your money in, if the transaction of this wallet is halal, they invest in halal shares, you know that they have a Sharia board governing their transactions. But according to the law of India or whatever country that is regulated there, they have to put it in a bank account, a third party, that generates interest just for safekeeping and to ensure that your money is not lost. This is how it's regulated. The interest money given to them, they have to dispose it in halal means, giving it to the poor or needy Muslims, not to consume it themselves, not to pay taxes with it, not to give a gift to someone who is getting married from their relatives. They have to dispose of it as forms of cleansing their wealth. But the most important thing is that the wallet itself is governed by a Sharia board, that they do their work in a halal way, rather than just putting your money to whomever takes it to invest it, providing that they give us a fixed interest and that the capital is maintained. This is riba, and it's haram, and this is not permissible, and Allah knows best. Rifat says, in the subcontinent, the hermaphrodites are not accepted in the society, and they are making themselves as women and dance in weddings or happy occasions and in the streets for money. Is this acceptable? And what is their role in society? This is not acceptable. Hermaphrodites are those who have the organs of male and female mixed. So we have to identify whether they are more inclined to be males or females. And this is done by the doctors, by the psychiatrists, and using them as females to dance in weddings and mix in the streets for money. This is degrading. This is not permissible. And it is like using them as freaks. And this is haram. They have not chosen this from themselves. Allah Azza wa Jal created them this way. This is different from transgenders who choose themselves to be someone they're not. These are homosexuals. These are gays. They're self-selected. But this type of hermaphrodites are created by Allah Azza wa Jal, and hence must be treated according to what they're inclined to be. And this is determined by the doctors and the psychiatrists, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. This is all the time we have for tonight's episode. Until we meet same time next week, I leave you fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
A is for Allah, nothing but Allah. Ba is the beginning of Bismillah. Ta is for taqwa, bewaring of Allah. And Tha is for thawab, a reward. Ja is for Jannah, the garden of paradise. Ha is for Hajj, the blessed pilgrimage. Kha is for Khatam, the seal of the prophethood given to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.